In this video, we'll learn how to develop a responsive HTML email template. Okay guys, so let's take a look at the email template here. So at the very top, we have that gray bar with the option to view the template in our web browser, which a lot of email templates are doing nowadays. Then we have the logo off to the left, our social media buttons on the right, followed by the big green banner image. Then we have a single column section with a button, 2 column sections, 3 column sections, and then as we navigate down towards the bottom, it's going to go back to that gray color for our footer, the same as the 3 column and the very top where we have the option to view it in our web browser. Now let's size down the width of the screen and see how the responsiveness is going to take place here. So as you can see, the logo and the social media buttons have gone to separate lines and centered themselves, and then the 2 column and 3 column sections are going to turn into single column sections for the email template. So here it is on how it's going to look on, say, an iPhone 7, for example. And in just a second, we're going to go over the compatibility and how it's going to work across different email clients using a really cool tool that I found online. So this is a program called Email on Acid, and I ran a few tests with a similar email template that I was working on. So I have to say that this email template that we're going to be building here is not perfect. Email on Acid tests across 91, or it might be 93 now, different email platforms, and most people have trouble getting email templates to work across every last one of them. Some of the most difficult ones seem to be Lotus Notes and Outlook. So with Lotus Notes and Outlook, with the earlier versions, you might have a little bit of trouble with compatibility with this email template layout. But aside from that, you're going to have it work across a number of devices. I know, for example, with all of my Apple products, it looks great for Gmail, Yahoo Mail, and the inherent mail that you get with the iPhone, for example, with iOS. So with email client compatibility in mind, I didn't think that we could create a cool layout and make it so every single email client will work with a nice workflow here for a tutorial. So what I've done is I've added a paid course and email templates that are made by other people as resources in the description of the video. So you can see the description for that. Also in the description of the video will be the starter files for us to get started with this tutorial here. So if you need to, go ahead and just pause the video for a moment and go ahead and grab the starter files. So I'm going to pull them up real quick and then we can get started. So here we have the email template starter files. So what we'll find in here are a number of images that will be throughout the template, as well as index.html. So as you can see on the left hand side here, I have the finished version of the template open in my my web browser, which I'm using Google Chrome for, and then on the right I have it open in my text editor, which I'm using Sublime Text for. So go ahead and just open up your index.html file from the starter files in your web browser as well as your text editor. Another great text editor you can use is called Atom, or you can use a program called Brackets. Okay, so now let's go over the document itself. So at the top we have doc type HTML for HTML5. Then we have the HTML tag here, and within that we have our head section, which is going to tell the HTML how we want it to display, starting with our character set, which is UTF-8. Then we have a compatibility meta tag for Internet Explorer Edge, and then we have our mobile device meta tag there, followed by a little bit of style here with some media query CSS to get us started. So if we type something into the body section of the website, it's going to show up in our web browser here. So you can do that just to make sure that you're linked up to Google Chrome or wherever it is that you have your index.html file showing up for the version that you're working on with the tutorial here. So let's go ahead and get started with our first tag. So if we go back to the completed version here, what we have surrounding and centering the whole template itself is going to be a wrapper. So we're going to give this a class, and we're just going to call it div class wrapper. And since our div class wrapper is going to span the entire body section of our HTML document here, what I'm going to do is, after closing the div, let's create a note saying that this is the end of our wrapper. So later, when we have a bunch of space in between the opening and closing tags, we can recognize it as the end of our wrapper there. So now let's go up, and just underneath our div class wrapper, what we'll do is we're going to create another wrapper, and we're just going to call this wrapper inner. So go ahead and write div class wrapper dash inner. And don't get too concerned with the purpose of every last div and table that we create while we're laying out the HTML, because it's all going to come full circle as far as the explanation goes once we style it with the CSS. So this end wrapper inner is going to also help center our email template on the page. So now let's drop down and we can get started with our actual tables inside of sort of the centered email template. So also inside of that wrapper inner, we're going to have that gray section there. So the first of our tables that we're going to create is going to be a table that we're going to call table class outer table. And what this is going to be is, this is going to be the full width gray section up here where it says click to view this email in your browser. So go ahead and just write table, and then we're going to give this the class called outer table. So while we're creating the email template here, we're going to have a couple of different table classes that make it so we can have it full width, which when we style it is going to be 670 pixels wide, and then the inner tables where it's going to be 610 pixels, and that's where we're seeing the white section with the gray off to the side of it from the wrapper inner. Alright, so I'm just going to create a note here saying that this is the end of the outer table, and then inside of that, as you probably know with tables, we have table rows inside of the actual table, and then table data. So go ahead and write the TD tag, and we're going to give this a class, and we're just going to call it header, since it's at the very top of our template here. Alright, so then close that table data tag, and we're just going to add our paragraph text with the link, which is the anchor text, or ahref. And you can send this wherever you like. Obviously later you'll want to send somebody to where you have your email newsletter hosted online so they can view it in a browser, but here we're just going to create a blank link with the hashtag and write click to view this email in your browser. Okay, and then I'll just close that table data tag. Alright, and now if we go over to the version that we're working on, we'll see that we have the text there that's displaying as a link, the unstyled link with the blue and underlined style for the text. So now we can drop down underneath the end outer table, and we're going to create the first table that has the width with the gray off to the side and the white in the center. So we're going to call this table class table class main table first, and this is going to be this area right here where you're seeing the gray off to the side, the white in the center, and then we have within it the logo to the left and the social media buttons to the right. So this will contain a pretty good amount of tags or information as compared to that first outer table that we created. Then the second or third table that we'll create will also be an outer table at full width with the banner image. Alright, so go ahead and just write table class main dash table first, and then you can create a note saying that this is the end of the first of the main tables. Okay. And then inside of that we'll add a table row. So just write TR and then open and close your table row. And inside of the table row, we'll have a table data tag for each of the two columns. So our table row will span the entire width there, and then our table data classes will be split up into two, one for each column. So just write TD class equals 2 dash column, and then you can close your table data class, and write end first of two columns. Okay, and now let's go ahead and create a div class for the logo section, and we're going to call this div class section. Alright, and then inside of that, let's write table width 100% for the first of the two sections. And then inside of that, we'll have our table row so TR for table row. And then we'll have another set after our table data class. So let's give this TD class, and we're going to call it inner table data, since it's our second TD class here. So TD class inner dash TD. And then close that table data class. And drop down, and we'll add one more table where we'll have our actual content for the logo over here. Alright, so drop down underneath TD class inner TD and write table class content. Alright, and then just make sure that you close out that table. And then what we'll do is we're going to drop down, and this is the last table before we get to our logo. So we'll need a table row inside of that table class content. And don't forget to close out the table class here for table class content. Now let's add our TD table data tag. And I'm actually going to change where the end of the first of the two columns note is down here. So it actually ends where our div class section ends. So you can go ahead and just paste it there. And then what we'll do is let's just copy this whole div class section and paste it beneath this first one, and that will be the second of our two columns. So go ahead and just drop down a line and paste it, and then I'll change it to the end of the second of two columns. So the first will be where the logo goes, the second will be where the social media links go, or the social icons. Now let's go ahead and add our logo in the first of the two column sections. So I'm just going to get rid of this logo text, and let's change this TD tag to TD align center. Alright, and then we'll add our image, and image source is going to be from our starter files w3newbie-logo.png. Okay, now if we go back to the version that we've been working on, we should see our logo. Then we'll just add a class, and let's just call this class logo. Later on, when we style it with the CSS, that class will allow us to center the logo when we move to the mobile version. So if we refresh, there we have our logo underneath the link, and then we have that social icons text showing up where we're going to add those icons right now. So let's get rid of this social icons text and get started with our ID, which is going to be div ID callout, and then within that we'll have an unordered list and list items for each social icon image. So again, it's called div ID callout, and then write UL, and we're going to give that a class, and let's just call it social. Okay, and then drop down, and we'll start with our first list item. So we're going to have a list item. Inside of that, we'll have a link, so we can be sent to Facebook, for example. So in here, you can go ahead and just add the link. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave these as blank links with the hashtag. And then inside of the link itself, we'll want our image. So just write img or image source. And then we'll add the facebook.png image from the starter files. Alright, so now if we go ahead and just save and refresh, here we have our social icon displaying. So later on we'll get rid of the inherent dot that we're seeing next to it for it being a list item, and we'll also change the size to reflect the sizes that we're seeing here. So now let's go ahead and just add the remaining social media links. So I'll just pull this up here, the starter files, so we have an idea of which links we're going to add next. So after Facebook, let's drop down and we'll add Google+. Also, you can add alternative text if you want. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this and paste it below, and then all we'll have to change is going to be the image extension here. So I'll just change it from Facebook to Google+, since that's the next link or social icon in line. So just write Google+, and then we'll do this with the next one, which is Twitter. So twitter.png, and then drop down, and the second to last one is youtube.png, and then we'll do one more paste, and this one is Instagram. Alright, so now if we save this and go back to the version that we're working on, let me just do away with these starter files, we'll be able to see that all of the social icons are laid out for us here. So later in the CSS, obviously we're going to style that, or those icons, and resize them to fit the design. So now let's drop down and get started on the banner image where it says responsive HTML email. So I'm going to go ahead and drop down underneath end main table first, and then we'll start the table that will contain the banner image. So just write table, and then I'm going to drop down and create a quick comment after the table saying that this is the end of the banner image. And since the banner image is full width, what we're going to do is use the same class that we used for the very top section of the template, which is the full width one, and that's table class outer dash table, rather than one of the main tables. Alright, so go ahead and drop down and we'll create our table row. And then for our table data tag, what we're going to do is we're going to give that a class. So let's say td class image. And make sure you spell it out rather than writing img. And then we can add our image. So that's just going to be green background.png. Green-background.png. Okay, and then drop down and close your table data tag. And then if we save it, we'll see that our banner image is showing up on this version. So it's pretty big. It's a lot wider than the 670 pixel width of the email template, but later we'll size it down to fit the width of the template in the CSS. Alright, so now let's go ahead and drop down, and the next section that we're going to do is going to contain the heading text where it says weekly newsletter, the paragraph text underneath that, and then the button where it says learn more. So it's this section right here. So actually this whole section is going to be a main table section, but then we'll have different column sections within that. So let's go ahead and, since it's going to be the section inside of the gray, let's call this table class main table. So I'm going to create a note here saying that this is the end of the main table. So end main table. and then we'll give it the class. So again, it's table class, main table. And then we'll drop down and add the table row within that to get us started. So drop down and TR, open and close. And then inside of that, we'll have our heading, the paragraph section, and the button. So let's just write end heading, paragraph, and button section. Okay, so now we can go back up and let's give it the table data class, and we'll call it one column or one dash column. And then close your table data. And inside of that, what we're going to do is we're going to give this another table, and we'll give it a table width of 100%. So that's going to be 100% inside of the gray section. And then TR, and then we'll give it another table data class, and we're going to call this inner TD, where all of our content will be. So TD class inner dash TD. And now we can add our paragraph text. So rather than using a heading to tag, because some email clients may not recognize it, what we're going to do is we're going to use a paragraph tag, and we're going to give it a class of H2. So P class H2, and then we can write weekly newsletter. All right. And then drop down and we'll do our next paragraph. And we're going to give this paragraph a class of center, since we want it to have that center aligned style there, rather than having it aligned to the left or right or justified. So I'm going to cheat a little bit here. You can write this out if you like, or you can use Ipsum dummy text, but I'm going to paste this text in here to save us a little bit of time rather than writing it out. All right, so now we have our paragraph text here. If we refresh, there we have weekly newsletter, and then the paragraph underneath. So now let's add our button. So just underneath that closing P, we'll add another paragraph class. That will contain our button. So just write P class and we'll call it button dash holder dash center. Okay, and then close out that paragraph. And inside of that, we'll have our link for the button. So right now we'll just leave it blank, and we can write learn more or whatever you like for the button text. And we're also going to give this a class. So it's going to be a class equals btn. And just remember to close out that paragraph class for the button holder center. So now if we go back and refresh, we'll have a simple link down here with the learn more text. And later in the CSS, we'll give it the style to make it that blue button there. Now let's get started with the two-column section that contains the search image, the chat image, and the text underneath. So just drop down underneath end, heading, paragraph, and button section, and we'll create some room where we can add the table row for these two columns. So rather than type them out from scratch, we can go up to the table row that starts out the two columns for the logo and social media sections. So go ahead and just grab those table rows from table row to table row and copy it, and then we can paste it below, and then we'll just do away with a little bit of the content so we can add the search and chat buttons here. Okay, so I'm going to drop down and just paste that underneath here. Alright, and then where the logo is, I'm going to take out that content, and I'm going to just write search. So I'll just go ahead and do away with this image right here and the TD align center, and then I'm going to write search image and text, and then in the second column we'll just do away with the div ID callout section, and this is where we'll have the text bubble or chat bubble, image, and text. Now let's drop down underneath the table row, and we'll just need to close out a couple of tags here. So let's close out the table tag where it says table width 100%, and then we'll close out the div tag for the div class section, and then we'll close out a TD tag and a table row tag. So where the div class ends, that's the end of the second of the two columns. So I'll just create a note here. So this is the end of the second of two columns. Alright, and then close out the comment. And now we can move up to the TD tag where we have the search image and text to add our content there. And actually this is going to be the end of the two column section in its entirety, where this table row closes, just before the end of the main table. So you can add that note in there if you like. Alright, so now here we are with the table data tag for the search image and text. So what we'll add first is going to be the image that we're seeing that has the orange background with the search icon, or the magnifying glass icon. So go ahead and do away with the search image and text there, and then we can add the image from our starter files. So let's delete this text here, and then we'll add the img source or image source text here, and that's going to be search.png for the image. And let's just give this a class of img/responsive. So later in the CSS we're going to use that class to make the image go full width when we make it responsive. So now I'm just going to copy this table row to table row to add the paragraph text underneath. And what we'll want to do is get rid of the image text there and add a class to the TD tag that says text. So then I'll just get rid of this, and this will be a paragraph tag instead, where it says make your emails stand out. So I'm going to cheat again a little bit here and copy and paste this text inside of the paragraph tag, and then I'll just close out the paragraph tag here. Okay, and now if we save it, we'll have our search image as well as the paragraph text there for us. So I'm just going to copy this table row actually, and we can replace the table row information here to make it really easy for ourselves, and we'll change the search.png to chat.png, and then I'm just going to take this text here and paste it into the paragraph text here. Alright, so that was a little bit of pasting, but hopefully it saved us some time. If you need to, just pause the video and go back to make sure that you have everything laid out properly. So here we have our search and chat images with the paragraph text appearing underneath them. Alright, so that's the end of our main table. Now what we'll need to do is add another outer table, because it's going to be the full width of the email template, similar to the banner image and the section at the very top. So this is going to be another outer table class. Okay, so just beneath where it says end main table, we're going to create another outer table class. So let's write table class outer dash table dash 2, and then we're going to give this the background color, which is that gray background color. So just write style background color, and this is going to be the gray hex value, which is C2, C1, C1. Okay, and then you can close out that style as well as the table tag, and then we'll do the closing table tag beneath it. And you can write that this is the end of the 3-column section, or the outer table 2 section. So we're going to have 3 columns inside of here, one for each of the sort of circle icon image and the centered text underneath it. So now let's drop down and let's create our table row. And inside of that, we'll have the first of our table data classes for the 3-column table data class. So just write td class 3-column. Okay, and then let's close out the table data class. And so this will contain all 3 of our 3-column sections, which we'll create the div classes for in just a moment. So let's just create a quick note here saying that this is the end of our 3-column sections. All right, and then what we can do is go back up to the line above it, and let's create our div class section. So we'll have a div class section for each one of the 3 columns. All right, so once we drop down and close out the div, let's create a table within that, and we'll give it a width of 100%. And then underneath that, we'll have nested a table row, which will then have our inner table data inside of it. So write tr, and then open and close your tr. And then we'll have td class So td class inner td for inner table data. All right, and then you can close out that table data tag. And then we'll create a table class for our content. So this is where we're going to have for example, the circle image and then the text underneath. So table class content, and then we'll do one more layer of table rows and table data before we nest our image and text. So write tr, and then td, and then we'll have our image starting with the mouse image that we're seeing off to the left. So image source mouse.png. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy and paste this div class section 3 times, or 2 times, since we already have 1, so we don't have to type out everything 3 different times here. So for our first table data of the content, we'll have our images, and then for the second, we'll have our paragraphs. Just make sure that you put td class text for the paragraph sections, and then I'll just write mouse.png here, which will change for the other sections, and then I'm going to copy and paste this text here. View emails on your phone or on your mobile phone or tablet device. Okay, so from the div class, where it's the end of the first of 3 columns, is where we can copy all the way up to the div class section and apply it 2 more times to create all 3 of the images and text sections. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Okay, and then just drop down under end first column of 3 and paste. And then I'll just say end second column of 3. And we can change mouse to mac.png. And then we'll just do one more paste down here to end the third column of 3, where we can write phone.png for the mobile phone. So now if we go back to the version we've been working on here in Google Chrome and refresh, here we have with our gray background all 3 of our circular images with the paragraph text underneath them. Alright, so our content is starting to fill out here. And the next section that we're going to drop down to is going to be the article content 2-column sections here. So let's drop down underneath the table that we just ended, which was the outer table, and start a new table, which will be our main table. So underneath outer table 2, we're going to have a table class called main table, where we have the gray section off to the sides of the white inner section with all of our content within it. So just write table class main dash table. Alright, and then drop down, and this is where I'm going to say that this is the end of our main table section here. Okay, and then within that, let's go ahead and create a table row. Alright, and then we're going to have 2 columns inside of here. So let's do a TD class 2-column. So write your table data class, and then we'll give it the class of 2-column. And then after we add our 2-column section, let's drop down and we'll create a div class section. And make sure you open and close your div. And then inside of that, we'll have a table tag. And we'll give it a width of 100%. And then drop down and we'll create our table row section. And inside of that, we'll have our inner TD table data class. So TD and then class inner TD. Okay, and then inside of this we'll have another table tag. And it's going to be virtually the same as what we're seeing up here. So it's that table class content and beneath it, or and below. And instead of having our paragraph text here, we're just going to change the image to pie chart.png, and that is, so instead of our paragraph text here, what we're going to have is a heading 3 tag for our article content text, and then we'll have 2 different paragraph sections. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this a P class or paragraph class of H3, since we don't want to use heading 3s and email templates or any heading tags whatsoever, and then write article content, and then drop down and add another paragraph tag. And I'm just going to copy this get the conversation started text and paste it in here. And then let's just create a little bit of separation between this and the next paragraph tag. So I'll just use a line break, which is the BR tag. And then I'll just copy this and paste it once more down here. Okay, so just make sure that you add the closing table tag in between the table row and table data tags after the paste. And now if we go back to the version we've been working on and refresh, there we have our article content text followed by the other two paragraphs as well as the pie chart image. So now let's move on over, and this is going to be pretty much the same thing with the second column in here with the article content text and then the user images or image underneath it. So what I'm going to do after the closing div class section, I'm just going to write end first of two columns, and then I'm going to take all of this HTML up to the div class section, drop down under the note, and then we can paste it in here. Okay, so now what we'll want to do is I'm just going to change the text to the second of the two columns, and then we'll change the position of the image to it being underneath the paragraph text in heading 3 rather than it being above it. And then we can just change the URL of the image. So that's going to be users.png rather than piechart.png. Okay, and then save and refresh. And there we have our text and our image showing up in the version we're working on. So now let's drop down and we're going to move on to the next section where it says the real story, and then we'll add the paragraph text underneath that. So go ahead and drop down underneath the table row here, and let's go ahead and add another table row where we're going to have a one column section inside of it. So TR, and then inside of it we'll have TD, and it's going to be a one column class. So TD class one dash column, and then we'll give the table a width of 100%. Okay, and then drop down and we'll add another table row tag, and inside of that we'll have a TD class. So it's going to be TD class inner dash bottom, and then close the TD tag. And now we can add our text. So we're going to have a heading 1 right here for the real story, and then two paragraph tags. So similar to the heading 3 that we did, we're going to have it as a P class H3, or I'm sorry, H1, rather than using the heading 1 tag itself. So P class H1, then write the real story and close your paragraph text or tag. And then we'll add another paragraph tag here. And we're going to put all this text in here. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit and paste it in. Okay, then drop down underneath that paragraph tag, and I'm just going to create a line break and then add another paragraph tag for the second bit of text here. Okay, so paste that in. Don't forget the periods. And then let's drop down, and what we're going to do is we're going to create the button. So similar to the button that we did above, let's create a div class for it. So it's div class button dash holder. And then inside of that, we'll have our actual button. So it's going to be A, and we're not going to send the link anywhere for now, but we're going to give it a class. So it's A class btn, and then I'm just going to write learn more for the text inside of the button. So now let's save and refresh, so we can see that our text is there as well as the link underneath, which will change into that blue button. Okay, so now let's drop down, and we're going to have another table. So it's going to be the start of a new sort of main table after the end of the main table here. So drop down underneath the end of the main table, and we'll have another table tag here. And this one is going to be our outer table 3. So write table class equals outer dash table dash the number 3. Okay, and then if you want, you can create a comment here that this is the end of our outer table 3. And now let's create our table row, and inside of that we'll have our table data tag, where we'll just have one column. So that's going to be td class equals 1 column. Okay, and then close your table data tag. All right, and now let's add another table tag here, and we'll give it a width of 100%. Okay, and now we'll have our last bit of table row tags and one last table data tag, which we're going to give the class of footer. So TD class footer. Okay, and then let's add our image that's down there, the logo. So that's just going to be w3newbie-logo.png. And then let's add our paragraph text underneath it. So we'll have this as p class equals footer. And then we'll start with the first line of text, which is 1000 Street Road, my city, comma, my state, and then the zip code 19000. And then what I'm going to do is create a line break, and then I'll write the copy sign, which is ampersand copy semicolon, and then w3newbie comma 2017 period, and then I'll have another line break, and I'll have an unsubscribe link at the bottom. So I'll just leave this blank for right now and put the text in there where it says unsubscribe. Okay, so now if we save and refresh, we should have our logo and footer text down at the bottom. I'm just going to get rid of this extra space underneath the HTML tag because that does it for all of our HTML for the entire tutorial. Now we'll be able to move over to our CSS. So since this is an email template, we're going to do internal CSS, and then at the end of the video I'll show you how you can use an inline style tool to move the styles from being internal to inline in with the actual HTML tags themselves. And that does it for all of our HTML. If you'd like to see how all of the CSS is laid out, just check out the completed version in the download that's in the video description. So here we have the completed mobile version of our email template. Now let's go ahead and take our internal style with the CSS in the completed version and make the styles inline. So if you do a quick Google search for CSS inliner tool, MailChimp has a tool here that we can use. Go ahead and just copy all of the CSS and HTML from the completed version and then hit convert. So once it's converted, we'll find that we have inline styles in with the HTML here. And what we'll want to do is go ahead and just copy this, and you can use that as your email template because you'll want to have your styles inline. And then let me show you one other tool here that's called puts mail. So what we can do is create a test email. So I'll just put my email address here and write test email, and this is going to inline the styles for us also. So I'll just paste all of the HTML and CSS here and then say move my CSS inline to make sure that it's the best results for Gmail and Outlook. And then I'm going to go ahead and check my Gmail and just make sure that the email template looks just as I want it to. So here I am in Gmail with the completed email template. So if I do some resizing, there we have the full layout of the HTML email template. Alright, so that does it for this tutorial. Thank you for sticking around, and I will see you in the next video.